Cal, there's a lot of talk these days about social justice. Is that the same thing as the kind of biblical justice that God describes?
You know, you could wish it were. I mean, wouldn't it be great if social justice meant simply justice applied to everybody, no exceptions? You know, there aren't any people who are abused, and there aren't any people who get away with abusing, right? That'd be great. And if that's what social justice meant, we could all go home and be happy, right? Unfortunately, the concept of social justice really was coined, or the phrase was coined in the late 19th century, largely in the progressive movement that was borrowing from Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Mm-hmm. And essentially, social justice, rarely carefully defined, basically means using the coercive power of government to achieve some greater approximation of equality for everybody than whatever we might have, no matter whether you've got a society where income inequality is very small or where income inequality is very great. Right. We're never satisfied. It's got to be a little more equal. In the Cornwall Alliance for the Stewardship of Creation, we're particularly concerned about the notion that fighting global warming is a matter of justice. We're going to do justice to the poor of this world because climate change is going to hurt them more than anybody else. Well, the actual reality of it is this: climate has very little to do with human well-being, but poverty is immensely important to human well-being. And the reality is that, for example, the Paris Climate Agreement that was worked out in the end of 2015, and President Trump has taken the United States out of it, but most of the nations of the world are still in it. Even according to the supporters of that, full implementation of that would reduce global average temperature at the year 2100 by 0.3 of a degree Fahrenheit. That's too little to make any difference to any ecosystem. At the cost of, even according to their own data, at a cost of $70 to $140 trillion. Trillion, big T there, right? That's $23.3 to $46.6 trillion per tenth of a degree Fahrenheit reduction in global average temperature. That's just absurd. And what could we do with that money instead? Purified drinking water, sewage sanitation, electricity for homes where now people use wood and dry dung as their primary cooking and heating fuels, medical care, infectious disease control, nutrition supplements. All of these things would have far greater impact in raising the poor out of poverty than 0.3 of a degree difference in global temperature.
Not to mention that if you just leave that money where it is and don't tax it in the first place, there's economic development, there's innovation,
exactly.
There's technology, there are ways to do things to help the poor that wouldn't exist otherwise.
Exactly, and that's precisely why I'm concerned about these things. And the real problem is that in the name of social justice, what's being done is actual injustice. And so we need to help the society to understand what real justice is according to the Bible, as distinct from this notion of social justice.
That's the dirty little secret of the environmental movement, isn't it? That the poor bear the brunt of the cost of the changes that they want to see happen.
Yeah, that's true. And it's especially ironic in that they are so fond of the term eco-justice. And the reality is that what they pursue as eco-justice tends to harm the poor by reducing economic development, by preventing the poor from being able to take advantage of the kinds of technologies that have lifted billions of people in the West out of poverty already. Right. It is its own form of oppression.
Cal, thanks so much for being with us. Great to have you
here. Thank you, Frank.
Here.
God bless you. Thank you.